Welcome to Alaska Weather. This is AKwx with the National Weather Service for June 3rd. We have a couple options for you. 1-800 number to take you through a menu system to further refine your search, and we also allow or give you a website, weather.gov/Alaska. You can also put in, instead of Alaska, Fairbanks, Juneau, or Anchorage to again help you further refine your search. Lastly, we do have an email available for you to ask any questions about this program or anything the Weather Service is doing. So, taking a look at the hazards map, nothing on the map today, no watches, warnings, or advisories today. We do have some coastal small craft advisories along the coast, the southern coast, but otherwise, and along the, just along the southern coast, but that's it. We will take a look at the Alaska wildland fire information. Yesterday they did have around 5,700 strikes, and you can see it was congregated around the southwest and western interior, and also across much of the western Brooks Range. They still have only 4 man fires right now in the state, so counting our blessings there. We did have some precipitation around the state for June 2nd. Some amounts range between 1/4 and 1/2 inch in the interior and southwest Alaska, and a little bit higher amounts down through the Panhandle into Prince William Sound, upwards of 1/2 inch in some locations in the Panhandle, but otherwise less than 1/2 inch to 1/4 inch. Alaska breakup map, and this is from yesterday. Again, most of the rivers are open. We are carrying mostly open a few rivers up on the North Slope, this Kaparik and Colville rivers, but otherwise breakup is rapidly coming to a close for 2020. Taking a look at the satellite image, you can see a nice little low slowly moving east in the Gulf, spreading some showers into the Panhandle, gave them a little precip yesterday. And you can also see some developments in the clouds here in the last couple loops. You can see the development of some thunderstorms there, but otherwise a weak trough moving through the Bering Sea, bringing some showers there, and then some showers down through southwest into Alaska Peninsula, and also there's our thunderstorms through western interior and interior locations, with maybe a few snow showers in the higher elevations of the southeast interior. And again, 1,006 millibar low in the Gulf, and some showers through the Panhandle, and a thermal trough through the interior. Also, for tonight's weather, we'll be looking at that low continue to move east in the Gulf, 1,009 millibars now. Scattered rain showers associated with that system. Otherwise, rain showers and maybe a few snow showers in the extreme southeast interior and Yukon Territory, but otherwise 1,011 millibar low with thermal low and trough system anchoring down through the Yukon Territory with another low, 1,011 millibars there. We will have some fog across the Arctic coast with onshore flow around a weakening high pressure in the Arctic Ocean, but otherwise weak low pressure over in extreme eastern Russia, 1,010 millibars there. Otherwise high pressure across the Aleutians, 1030 millibar with a few rain showers there. Thursday's weather, continued thunderstorm activity in the eastern interior and down through portions of south central and into the Brooks Range, western Brooks Range, and western interior, with 1,011 millibar thermal low in there and a trough system anchored through another low in near the border. Otherwise, the low in the Gulf continues to move east, 1,009 millibars now. Scattered rain showers in the Panhandle. Friday's weather, looking at again thunderstorm activity during the afternoon, mainly across the interior. 1,008 millibar thermal low in the interior. scattered rain showers across the southern mainland, and improving conditions in the Panhandle. That low has finally moved off in the Gulf, and 1,030 millibars high anchored over the Aleutians. Low temperatures Thursday morning, 20s across much of the North Slope, Kaktovik 29, Dead Horse 29, Nukiavik 29, Point Hope 29, Fort Yukon 47, Eagle 38, 47 in Fairbanks, Big Delta 45, McGrath 47, Aniak 45, Bethel 43, Emonic 38, Nome 41, 41 in King Salmon, 40s and even upper 30s across the Aleutians and Alaska Peninsula, 40 in St. Paul, 45 in Kodiak, Cordova 45, Yakutat 40, and 40s through much of the Panhandle, 45 in Haines. For Thursday afternoon, 70s across the interior, 60s down through the southwest, but otherwise 36 at Kaktovik along the North Slope with that onshore flow. And cloudy conditions, 40 at Dead Horse, 36 at Ukiavik, and Point Hope, 36, Nome 54, Kotzebue 45, 65 in Fairbanks, 61 in Northway, and then 65 McGrath, 61 in Aniak, 61 in Bethel, 58 in Emonic, 63 in King Salmon, 50s through much of the Alaska Peninsula, 45 through the Aleutians. Friday morning, looking at 20s across the North Slope and 40s across much of the interior and rest of the mainland, 47 in Anchorage, 47 in Lime Village, and then 40 in Bethel, and then 43 in Seward, and 45 in Kodiak, 40 in King Salmon, 40s through the Alaska Peninsula and Aleutians with shimmy of 40, St. Paul 40, and then 40 in Yakutat, 45 in Haines, and 40s across the rest of the Panhandle. And for high temperatures Friday afternoon, we're going to be looking at, again, 30s and cooler conditions across the North Slope with that onshore flow around that ridge of high pressure across the Arctic Ocean. And then 45 in Point Lay, 38 in Point Hope, 74 in Fort Yukon, maybe even touching 80s there in the Yukon Flats area, but otherwise 70 in Tanana, 70 in Bettles, 65 in Galena, 67 in McGrath, 58 in Grayling, 52 in Emonic, 61 in Iliamna, and 59 in King Salmon, 58 in Bethel, and then 52 in Cold Bay, 52 in Dutch Harbor, upper 40s through the rest of the Aleutians, 56 in Kodiak, 54 in Yakutat, 58 in Haines, and 50s across the Panhandle. With Seward now 59, 63 in Anchorage, 67 in Talkeetna, and then 63 in Gulkana. Valdez is coming in at 59. Thank you, and continued for the educational portion.
And now, aviation weather around Alaska.
Let's take a look at the flying weather for Thursday morning around a Arctic high pressure ridge. There will be onshore flow across the Arctic coast, bringing IFR conditions there, and onshore flow with low pressure in the northern Bering or extreme eastern Russia will bring onshore flow, marine stratus across much of the west and into Kotzebue Sound with IFR conditions there, IFR conditions down through the western Aleutians, and marginal conditions across the Panhandle and into southeast interior and portions of the Prince William Sound and Kodiak Island. For Thursday afternoon, some improvement across the west coast, but IFR conditions just off the coast there, and IFR conditions through the western Aleutians and along the Arctic coast, with marginal conditions scattered through the northern Gulf and the Panhandle around a low pressure system moving slowly eastward in the Gulf. And then for Thursday morning, IFR conditions again across the Arctic coast with onshore flow there, and onshore flow across the west coast brings IFR conditions through much of the west coast down through St. Lawrence, St. Matthew, Pribs, and through the central and western Aleutians, and again around the low pressure in the Gulf, some marginal conditions in the Panhandle and into the northern Gulf. And Friday afternoon, some improvement across the Arctic coast there. Otherwise, marginal conditions show up along the west coast, some improvement there as well. And IFR conditions through central and western Aleutians, and IFR conditions through the southern Bering, and then improvement in the Panhandle with VFR conditions there, marginal conditions down along the Gulf Coast. Past conditions are going to be looking pretty good. Flying conditions, AKwx, VFR, Adigan, VFR, all the passes in the Alaska range are looking pretty good. VFR conditions, Merrill and Lake Clark. Rainy VFR, windy VFR, Isabel VFR. Mentasta, marginal early, VFR by the end of the day. And Tanita, marginal improving to VFR. Portage, I went for VFR conditions all day with marginal conditions on the east entrance. And Chilkoot and White, marginal early, VFR by the afternoon. Freezing levels, looking at surface freezing level cutting across the North Slope and into Canada, and another surface freezing level analyzed there in the mountainous areas of the border between Canada and Alaska, down near the Panhandle and southeast interior. Otherwise, elevated freezing levels between 6,000 and 8,000 feet across much of the mainland, northwest part of the mainland there, and then anywhere between 2,000 and 4,000 feet across the Panhandle and North Gulf, and between 4,000 and 6,000 feet across the Alaska Peninsula, 6,000 feet across much of the Aleutians. And for icing on Thursday, around that low pressure system in the Gulf, spreading moisture across the Panhandle into Canada and southern part of the southeast interior and southern portions of the mainland. Went for isolated moderate conditions for icing between 8,000 and 10,000 feet. I did analyze the possibility of considerable moderate in portions of the Panhandle, and isolated moderate across the portions of the west coast and into the Brooks Range. Jet stream for Thursday, low pressure in the northern Gulf, 90 knot jet around that low, 60 knots as you get down towards the end of the Alaska Peninsula, 35 knots of the portions of the eastern Aleutians, 30 knots across Prince William Sound around low pressure in the Gulf, light and variable otherwise across much of the mainland, 9,000 foot winds, light and variable across the mainland once again, 30 knots as you get into the northern Gulf around low pressure system, 25 knots as you get towards the end of the Alaska Peninsula, otherwise around low in the Bering Sea, 35 knots there in the central Bering. 3,000 foot winds, low in the northern Bering, 25 knots in the central Bering, and around the low in the Gulf, light and variable across the mainland, 25 knots possible across the Arctic coast. And lastly, for turbulence Thursday, below 4,000 feet in portions of the Alaska Peninsula, but otherwise very nice flying conditions, especially across the Alaska Range and Brooks Range.
Leatherbacks are the largest turtles on Earth, growing up to 7 feet long and weighing more than 2,000 pounds. These sea turtles are among the most highly migratory animals on Earth, some traveling up to 10,000 miles a year between their nesting and feeding grounds. Prevalent in every ocean except the Arctic and Antarctic, the species overall is declining, more so in the Pacific. In the eastern Pacific, the Mexican population was once thought to be the largest in the world and has experienced an alarming decline.
This trajectory of decline that we've seen, and actually collapse. We're talking about only 20 or 30 turtles nesting every year, where thousands used to just 40 years ago. That's the kind of dramatic decline.
The western Pacific population has been declining steadily, and it's particularly critical to act now before it collapses, while there are enough turtles and nests to respond to conservation measures. But threats to all leatherbacks in the Pacific need to be addressed.
The top threats to populations are uncontrolled coastal development, all the bad stuff on the nesting beaches, egg harvest, poaching of the females, predation on the eggs by dogs and pigs. Deforestation makes the sand too warm and dry and the eggs don't hatch. Another one is incidental capture in fishing gear. During their vast migrations, they get caught in fishing gear throughout the Pacific. And finally, marine debris, which the leatherbacks mistake for their favorite food, jellyfish, and they choke on those.
Protecting leatherbacks in U.S. waters alone is not enough to ensure the continued existence of the species. The highly migratory nature of Pacific leatherbacks requires cooperation and international collaboration. NOAA is focusing on partnerships with Mexico, Central America, Indonesia, Papua New Guinea, and the Solomon Islands in the Pacific.
Our action plan promotes a holistic recovery strategy that addresses all the sources of mortality. So that's basically ensuring that the remaining nesting sites are protected. And the nests produce as many hatchlings as possible. And then secondly, in tandem with that, is reducing the fisheries-related mortalities. We're working with international partners to incentivize community participation on the nesting beach conservation and developing alternative livelihood programs that wean communities off leatherback resources and introduce alternative methods for food and income. Recovery is going to take a long time, on the order of 20 to 30 years at least, before we see some of these actions bear fruit. But here in the US, we can all help leatherbacks by making seafood choices, for instance, that support sustainable fishing practices. And beachgoers can certainly do their part by keeping our oceans clean of plastic debris, picking up marine litter, particularly plastic bags.
Together with our partners, we are strengthening protection and conservation efforts to ensure a future for leatherbacks, helping them to survive and once again thrive in the waters of the Pacific Ocean.
For over 40 years, NOAA scientists have been collecting data and piecing together the story of the gray whale. Each year, new discoveries are made, revealing the secrets of this ancient traveler. With the northeastern Pacific population recovered, leading scientists from the NOAA Southwest Fisheries Science Center continue their research efforts to help save the western population from extinction. The most effective way to identify individuals and count the population is to photograph them from the surface. Using the gray whale's distinctive markings and gray spots caused by parasites on their skin, scientists document these characteristics to identify individuals.
So we're able to track migratory pathways and corridors by the simple use of photo identification. There are other ways to do that as well, biopsy sampling and genetics.
And from the air.
Aerial photography is one way you can study animals based on their size and shape. So you can learn a lot about nutritive and reproductive condition of whales just by measuring their size and shape from vertical aerial photographs.
You can also put satellite transmitters on them and track them remotely. You put the transmitter on and let them go, and you watch them move across the Pacific or down to China or wherever it might be.
To further learn and discover where these great sojourners swim, the team of researchers traveled to Russia and set up camp on Sakhalin Island.
The main focus of our research while we were on Sakhalin was to collect photo identification. If it was a whale that we had not collected a genetic sample from previously, we would also attempt to collect a sample from the whales.
Whereas whales are endowed with natural insulation, their human observers must gear up to brave the cold in order to study these marine giants up close.
We're typically only able to work about 1/3 of the time that we're there, and that's mostly due to this fog that just invades the area and sits sometimes for weeks on end. So it can be very challenging to try and do field work in this site.
Recently, 2 whales from the western population surprised scientists by migrating across the Pacific to the waters of California and Mexico.
It's a really fun finding. It's added another piece to the puzzle that we didn't previously know about. And I would have to say that it's opened up more questions than we had before.
Research scientists from Japan, Russia, and the United States share images of animals they've spotted.
We take a photograph of an individual off of Sakhalin Island, and we get a phone call from Japanese scientists, and they say, hey, guess what? We've got a picture of a gray whale in Japan. We say, can you send it to us? We'd love to try and match it. They'll send us the picture, we'll compare it to our catalog, and they'll say, hey, we've got a match from Sakhalin to Japan.
Unlike many species of whales that still remain on the endangered species list, the eastern Pacific gray whale, once on the brink of extinction, now numbers about 20,000 individuals. Recovery efforts that started 40 years ago and the ongoing research and monitoring by NOAA scientists have contributed to the conservation of the gray whales. Together, with legal protection and public education, scientists are playing their part to ensure the survival of this magnificent migratory animal.
And now, marine weather around Alaska.
Let's take a look at the sea ice analysis for today from our sea ice desk. Lower concentrations of ice through the Bering Strait up through the northwest coast and just off the Beaufort Sea coast there. This pattern will continue for the next couple of days as we move through summer. For the Thursday marine forecast for southeast, inside waters, winds generally from the south at 10 to 15, seas as high as 3 feet. Outside waters, winds generally from the south or southeast at 10 to 15. We do have a small craft advisories out for those 9-foot waves in some areas through Thursday. And for Friday's forecast, inside waters, central and southern, winds generally from the northwest at 10 to 15. Northern inside waters from the south at 15. Outside waters, winds generally from the northwest at 20 knots, seas as high as 6 feet. For Thursday's marine forecast, south central Gulf area, winds generally from the east at 10 to 15. Prince William Sound from the southwest at 10 knots. And Cook Inlet, winds generally from the southwest at 15 to 20. Seas as high as 5 feet in the central Cook Inlet. For Friday, Gulf area, winds generally from the west at 10 to 15. Prince William Sound, westerly, 10 knots there. Cook Inlet, we're going to be looking at winds generally from the west or southwest, 10 to 15. West of the Barren Islands, seas as high as 5 feet. Thursday's marine forecast, Kodiak Island, Alaska Peninsula. Around Kodiak Island, winds generally from the west or northwest, 15 to 20, seas as high as 6 feet. Southern side of the Akpen, looking at winds generally from the west at 15, seas as high as 5 feet. North side of the peninsula, winds generally from the west at 15, seas as high as 4 feet. And for Friday, around Kodiak Island, winds generally from the southwest at 15, seas as high as 5 feet. South side of the peninsula, winds generally from the southwest at 15, seas as high as 5 feet. North side of the peninsula, winds from the west 15 to 20, seas as high as 4 feet. Loosen chain Thursday, looking at winds generally from the west 10 to 15, seas as high as 4 feet across the region. And Friday, looking at winds continuing from the west, generally from 15 to 20, with seas as high as 6 feet. And for the west coast, Thursday's forecast, winds generally from the west at 15 to 20, seas as high as 4 feet around the Pribs. And in Norton Sound, winds generally from the southwest at 10, seas as high as 2 feet. Friday's forecast, winds generally from the west or northwest, 10 to 15. Norton Sound, winds generally from the southwest at 10. And for Arctic coast, winds generally from the east, 20 to 25. And then down to the northwest coast and Bering Strait, winds generally from the west or east, and looking at 10 to 15 knots there. And Friday's forecast, Arctic coast, coastal waters, winds generally from the east at 20 to 25, and then down through the Bering Strait, northwest coast, winds generally from the west 10, seas as high as 2 feet in the open water areas. And then for tonight's weather, looking at weakening low in the Gulf, moving slowly east, 1009 millibar low there, scattered rain showers overnight, with scattered rain showers and maybe even a few snow showers in the high country of the southeast interior. Otherwise, a thermal trough through the interior down into the Yukon Territory, areas of fog along the coast with onshore flow there, and an onshore flow across the west coast bringing some fog there. And then we have a 1030 millibar high near the Aleutians. And for Thursday's weather, looking at thunderstorms developing in the afternoon with scattered rain showers around that thermal low in the southeast interior with a 1010 millibar low, and a thermal trough from the Seward Peninsula all the way down to through the Yukon Territory, British Columbia, and then that low slowly moving eastward, 1009 millibar now, with scattered rain showers in the Panhandle, cloudy skies around high pressure 1032 millibars in the Bering. And for Friday's weather, continued thunderstorm activity in the interior, especially across the southwest, and clearing conditions in the Panhandle.
These forecasts are for planning purposes only. Call 1-800-WX-BRIEF for a formal pre-flight briefing. Always file a flight plan before you go flying. The U.S. Coast Guard Auxiliary urges you to leave a float plan with a friend or the harbor master before you go boating.